So that's the topic for today, Agile Alliance and PMI, exploring the impact of these organizations joining forces. Quincy, we do have, I will ask you if you could monitor the chat as we go, because I'm not going to have it top of mind. Sure. I have like stuff always in my different monitors.
Yep, no worries.
Appreciate it. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself in the meantime, that'd be amazing.
All right, so I'm Quincy Jordan, managing partner with MarQuiPlus. Some of you, half of you, are familiar with me. And so the things that are very important to me and why I thought this was such a good idea that Mariano brought, to us at MarQuiPlus is being effective is extremely important to me, and having a good experience along the way. And so over the years, I have been an Agilist, but prior to being an Agilist, I was a traditional project manager. And when I became an Agilist, I was fiercely confronted with PMI as the enemy, traditional project management as the enemy, and so forth. And I did not actually have that perspective. I had the perspective that, quite frankly, traditional project management, Agile approaches, Scrum, Kanban, DSDN, XP, whatever they are all different tools in different ways to accomplish a thing and deliver value. And so I also thought it was very interesting to have this conversation to see what other people thought. And then many of us have probably seen a lot of the chatter that has, come out since the announcement. So that's a little bit about me and my perspective as this goes, and I'll share more as the conversation continues. But happy to see everyone. Hey, Justin. Karsten.
Hey, Quincy. See ya.
Cool. And I'm Mariano Oliveti. I'm also a managing partner with MarQuiPlus. And my perception is not very different from Quincy, right? So number one, I saw all the chatter that was happening in LinkedIn from my prior role as a project manager, then my last few years in Agile roles of sorts from product owner, Scrum Master, Agile coach. And then I'm a big proponent of change, adaptation. I love reinvention of sorts, and I love innovation. So whether I see some people at times feeling the fear of change, including myself, every now and then I freak out over large change. I do see opportunities as well. I do need to take a minute, I need to digest, and then immediately I react to, hey, what are the possibilities? What are the things that might come up that are really beneficial out of this? So I personally was, interested at the beginning to see what was coming out of this. And then I was very hopeful. So we'll see where it goes. What I'm really interested in is in everybody's opinion. Like, I would love to hear the rest of the experts in the room going, hey, you know what? I think, this might happen. These are the questions that we have that we might not have answered. And we do have some questions that we get in advance. And we will post those as well, just to see what are your thoughts, or if Lenka wants to throw us some informal or formal information about what those questions, what the answer to those questions might be. My initial reaction to this, and again, I'm just going to open the floor immediately after I share a little bit of where my thoughts are at. So I expect this partnership for the Agile folks here to emerge like a backlog. I expect to evolve. I expect that there's some things that are known and some things that are very much unknown. And I expect to evolve over time as well. I want to hope that there's some feedback loops of sorts with the end users that will make this better over time, which is what made some of the frameworks very good at the end of the day. And obviously and we have Pierre actually joining as well. So let's give Pierre a second. Just for you guys that might not know, Pierre is actually the CEO of PMI. So, I'm very curious to see. I'm just going to give him a minute so he can connect and I can say hello. It might take him a second, but it's okay. So I'm just curious to see how this partnership is going to evolve. So I'm very hopeful. I think that it might fill the gap. Yeah, I know he's connecting. If you can respond to the chat, Quincy, I would appreciate it.
Yes.
I think that he will feel, hey, Pierre, now you can, I think that you connected. Thank you for joining. We have a small group as of now. We expect about 20 people, but we don't know. So thank you very much for joining. So as I was saying, my personal expectation is that this will emerge as a backlog. This will evolve over time. I hope that it fills the gap in between what is traditional waterfall and where agile frameworks need some structure of sorts. So we'll see. For the most part, we see on the field as consultants that there is some implementations that are a little bit hybrid. Most of the time, it's a pick and choose off the menu where it's not, in air quotes, pure Scrum or pure Safe. And there's a possibility here that this might help fill in that gap of the elements of project management, the elements of agility over time. So that's what I'm hopeful for. Now, I'm curious, and please don't all go at once. I'm curious, what are your thoughts? What are your expectations? Where do you see this going? Did it catch you by surprise? Are you surprised? Are you excited? Where are you at?
So I'll be honest with you. This is Lori Heinzelman. I became aware of this change when Quincy posted this. I've been focused sort of in a different area right now. I'm in school. I went back for my graduate degree and I'm focused in the area of applied IO psychology. And the reason I'm focused in this area now is because of Agile, right? Like that it was very people-centric. It was all about the mindset and how we treat people. And so I've been focused in that space, but I've stayed connected with Quincy because Agile is still very much a part of like who I am, particularly Scrum and those values that we have. And when I heard about it, I wasn't panicked. I was very curious. And I thought, similar to what you did, Mariano, that maybe this is a chance now. Like we're coming together. And instead of that traditional clash that we've had with people who are used to the traditional project management approach, and then us agile people that are like coming in and trying to change things, that maybe now this is a chance to really see that change that we were all hoping for in the beginning, and not just like those. I mean, we're still going to pick and choose, right? Because it's all dependent on your environment and what makes sense for you. But I see it as an opportunity for all of us, honestly, to where we're less combative maybe, and we're more collaborative, and we're able to move this going forward. So I'm excited. And I am waiting to hear from Pierre and others from the traditional PMI side, because I'm very curious what brought this about. Like, I'd like to understand the why behind the merge first before I go crazy.
That's a great point. So we do have a set of questions that we knew that they were going to come up. Some people posted those in advance, and we still have people trickling in. So one of them is like, was this a business decision? Are we looking for an opportunity? Have they identified that opportunity? Is it kind of like trying to, and again, Pierre and Linka, I'm going to let you guys speak about these, like what's the vision behind this move? Obviously, because we don't know. But it feels like there's opportunities galore out of this. So I personally think it's going to be great. I think that the majority of the reaction, the allergic reaction that I saw online, is from people that I think they still think of PMI as PMI 15 years ago, where it was incredibly structured, just like processes. And then we have agility coming through and going like, hey, people on processes over tools, people over processes and tools. And I think that was the first disconnect. But PMI they have evolved. They have included agility from the prior version of the PMBOK. they're including AI. So there's an evolution to it. And I don't think that a lot of people disassociated from project management a decade ago are aware of. So
there's another,
yeah.
and there's another aspect that I would like to add, which is, in my opinion, this answers the question for all the people that, keep saying, is Agile dead? Well, apparently not, because global organizations don't join with dead efforts. So I think this helps to answer that question for a lot of people that, have been going on and on and on about, is Agile dead?
So Quincy, Mariano, would you mind if I just step in?
Absolutely.
Oh, go ahead. I was about to pass the microphone to you guys.
Right, because I saw Pierre was texting that he might have some issues with audio, so I just want to give him a little bit of time.
No, it's okay. It's been fixed. But go ahead, start.
Yeah, no. So I just also I sent a few words about me in the chat, but just also wanted to introduce myself. And actually, my previous job before I joined PMI was an agile transformation leader in the financial industry. That's something that I was doing for a couple of years. And before, I was working on large project initiatives, and by education I'm actually a software engineer, so I was learning about agile methods like 25 years ago. I don't want to count that much, disclose my age, but what I'm trying to say is that the modern world of project management is very much fluent when it comes to distinction between different methods, project management. The thing is that what is often called waterfall, honestly, I don't think it even exists. And the question is, if it ever existed literally in a true sense of how waterfall was defined. And it's really sad that it still lingers around project management profession, which really evolved a lot and is right now much more focused on providing value, being able to work in different ways of working, collaborate with different professionals, and ultimately make projects successful and help to deliver value for organizations. And when you look at the history of PMI and our standards and our documents that are actually co-created with our community. So then Agile was first mentioned, and here I'm taking credit from one of our colleagues, from Mike Griffiths, who's also a previous board member of Agile Alliance. So it was first mentioned already in PMBOK 4. Now we are working on PMBOK 8th edition, and Agile keeps evolving, and project management keeps evolving, and these approaches are existing or coexisting together. And a lot of project professionals are telling us we are fluent in all of that, and of course, because we work with our colleagues, some of them work on more structured projects, predictive projects, some of them work in agile environment, and we all need to work together, and that's what matters for them.
Yeah, I think you're right, Mariano, to say that one of the issues of an organization like PMI is that people have their own vision of PMI based on when they interacted with PMI. Mm-hmm. So, and that is not limited to the people from the Agile community. You have people who took their PMP in 1995. Mm-hmm. And when they talk about PMP or PMI, they don't know what they're talking about. I mean, they're talking about what it was 30 years ago. And because they have their PMP, because they've been involved in project management, they think they still know what PMI is, but they don't, right? It's just an old understanding. The second thing I want to say is that we cover so many different industries. We all have to recognize that when your job is to send someone to Mars, it can't be exactly the same thing as when you're developing an app, right? So the level of regulation you have to face, the potential life-threatening consequences of what you're doing, so we have to recognize that not everybody can manage projects in the same way, and that yes, some people would be, even in the project management community, and even if they understand what PMI is doing now, they may say, in my case, Agile can work, but not only, like it can't be the only way we operate, because we're not doing software development, we're building a nuclear bomb, so we need some sort of, and we're doing this in the context of a contract with the government and approvals by the Congress, things like that, right? So it's not that you can equate all projects and expect that everyone is going to work in the same way. Now, PMI was I surprised by the reactions? Well, first of all, you have a lot of people who actually supported the move or are open-minded. You do have some people who indeed were, I think, very shocked by the news. In part, it is because indeed they do not know what PMI does today. And it's true that PMP today is about 50% agile. And it's not just the methodologies. A lot of the principles of agility have been embedded by PMI. So if you talk, for instance, about servant leadership, it's everywhere in PMI's thinking and tenets and learning, right? Removing obstacles, like a lot of the agile principles are actually mainstream today in how we talk at PMI. So some people in the PMI community don't even understand what the agile people are talking about, like when they say traditional project management, because that's not how they were trained themselves, right? They've already been told that they have to understand all methodologies. You have to understand lean, you have to understand agile, you have to have, we encourage people to take SAFe certifications because we don't compete with SAFe. Like that's one specific framework. We're good with that. Like if people want to learn that, if it's useful to them, they should go. So I think the problem we need to address now, we acquired Agile Alliance because we felt it's kind of a natural evolution for us to expand our vision of what is project management. And as we go in certain directions like sustainability, like AI, Agile has been there for a while, but now Agile Alliance wants to develop, grow further, and they don't have the resources to do it. So why don't we help them do it? And that's exactly what the move is about, like trying to make Agile Alliance more successful, as we've done with PMOGA that we acquired last year, right? So that's the thing. I do not believe that we should always say everything will become hybrid, because no, I mean, there's a space for pure Agile as well, right? And we're happy about that. We have to be careful not to confuse Agile methods and agility as almost a philosophy of management, right? Which we also want to promote. And then what I think we need to help the Agile community come up with is a new narrative that is not based on we disrupted project management, because that's not going to work anymore 30 years after project management has started to evolve itself. But simply go back to, why is Agile a great philosophy? When does it work? How can it work even outside of software development and tech? And how can the project management community help develop Agile even further? That's what we want to accomplish. And I've read this is a merger. No, I mean, we wrote this is not a merger. Yes, it's kind of like an acquisition, because we could not acquire a nonprofit, but we put together a system by which, in practice, we are going to provide the resources and we'd be involved in key decisions. But we want to keep Agile Alliance as a separate entity with its own thinking and autonomy of thinking. And I think this is what we want to do, just like we did with PMOGA or with Project Managers Without Borders.
And so, Pierre, one of the things that you mentioned around like the evolution of PMI and how things have changed with PMI, and how people see, have a certain mindset because they're stuck in a certain paradigm. And one of the things that Mariano and I were discussing in preparing for this was how just within the Agile space alone, there has tended, and you could see it on LinkedIn like all the time, there has tended to be this perspective that agility and in Agile approaches are IT and software approaches, in that if you go outside of that, it's no longer any of those things, and that those things don't apply. And I think that has actually been a very big disservice to the Agile community, because there's so many engagements, so many projects that are outside of IT, outside of software development, whether it's manufacturing or healthcare or finance or marketing, automotive. Like there's so many applicable ways to employ Agile. And I think that also holds true for project management, even in a traditional sense, that there are many avenues, to your point. And so I think the more that that perspective can be shared, and the more that that perspective is adopted, then the better off the general community of delivering value will be better off.
Absolutely. And by the way, so we do have some people in the PMI community who are still fighting Agile to an extent. I would say it's a very small minority. We're talking about people who are either, frankly, who have been retired for 20 years, right? So some of them, or people who are really from that infrastructure world or military, people who have worked on projects that have massive constraints that are very difficult to overcome. So, but there are also variable people as well, right? They manage projects of $10 billion, things like that. So it's always useful to learn from them as well. So you will find that, but the vast majority of project professionals don't even understand what you're talking about when you say traditional project management versus Agile, because for them, we've been telling them for years, if you don't understand Agile, you can't do project management. That makes no sense. Now, agility, the concept of agility applies to all sectors. That whatever you do, thinking about, does this process make any sense? Why don't we focus on delivering something? We've seen entire industries, including the aerospace industry being completely disrupted by different ways of thinking that are, basically coming from Agile. It's not necessarily a Scrum method applied to developing a rocket, okay? Of course, the software part of it maybe, but the principles of an MVP, and getting $100 million first, and then do something, and then get more funding. All of that is very much Agile. It's not even corporate agility; it's industry agility, right? So those principles we embrace 100% at PMI, and whomever doesn't understand that needs to be retrained. And I'm fighting with the people who don't understand that at PMI. But again, it's a real small minority. Anyone below 60 years old understands that, right? And even above, a lot understand that as well. So, but of course, if the Agile community keeps saying our identity is that we refuse project management, that's not going to go well with project managers, because then they feel these guys don't even understand what we're doing. Why are they insulting us? This is telling us that we're incompetent. This doesn't make any sense, right? And I don't think it really helps the Agile community either at this point, maybe 30 years ago, but today, we need to find something different. There are so many positive things to say about agility. We don't need to say this is against project management.
Yeah, no, I so totally agree. And I think you probably missed a few first minutes where I was like, this is a great opportunity to find out that middle ground where, and again, I don't even know if we can call it that, but for the sake of the conversation, traditional project management, agility, come up with a framework or an opportunity to identify everything that has been done, not everything, but there's a lot done on the field today, which is a hybrid of or bad application or a somewhat application of Scrum, Safe, but it's all done in a pick and choose environment where a pure Scrum or pure Safe is just not being applied in many occasions. So I think that here you have a unique opportunity to say, hey, from all the lessons learned from the last 10 years or what have you, and with this movement and with quick feedback loops, we might come up with an idea that might be, I wouldn't say something that would revolutionize anything, but it might just solidify, hey, this is our point of view. We have years of experience on this, and we might come up with something that is beneficial for, and I think that's a great niche market, like the people that have not found, because you will find a lot of organizations that are right now, they might not like Agile, it turned into a bad word. A lot of organizations, project management turned into a bad word. And those are from 10 years ago, experiences that they had in the past. Safe is a bad word in many organizations. So this unique opportunity to create something that might be appealing for the industry in general, not just software like Quincy said, but actually Quincy said exactly what I want to say, not just in software, but everywhere else. So which brings me to what you guys were talking about a second ago. Is there a comms plan to educate the people that actually don't get it, that did not understand the move correctly or as intended?
We're more agile than you think. So no, we don't have a comms plan. It doesn't, but we need to develop a narrative. Yes, definitely. And part of that discussion we're having today and others that we want to have in the coming weeks are also useful to us, because we get a sense of, you know, what the Agile community has in mind. You know, I'm for instance, I'm realizing I didn't fully realize the extent to which the Agile community is actually worried about the future of Agile. Like at PMI, we're not worried about the future of Agile, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's the Agile community though, Pierre. I think that my personal opinion on this, incredibly personal, I think that a lot of people that have been frustrated by certain things that have happened in their own personal experience, they're transcending that into Agile is dead, which might not necessarily be true. There's companies and organizations today that are just trying to implement Scrum for the first time, believe it or not. There's organizations that are trying to implement SAFe or are doing it very well. I wish that Carl was here, because he is actually in an organization that is thriving in SAFe. So whether we like it or not, if it is our preference or not, I don't think it's dead. Does it have the traction that it had 15 years, 20 years ago? Potentially no, but it's definitely not dead. Like, that's just, again, my own personal opinion.
But you know, so people have an interest in saying that something is dead so they can sell whatever they're selling, right? So the same way maybe some Agile people have been saying project management is dead to sell their own Agile approaches, then someone is going to say Agile is dead to sell something different. But you know, in the end, project management is definitely not dead. Like, we've never had so much growth at PMI, and you know, there are more and more projects, right? Transformation is everywhere. So I don't know of any CEO, any of the CEOs I know would tell you, I don't want to be more Agile. Like, if you tell them, like, do you want your company to be more Agile? They don't understand Scrum, right? But they want to be more Agile. They understand that. You get them to read the 4 principles of Agile, they will say, I agree with that. Like 99% say I agree with that. Maybe in tech, you know, they will think more about, okay, but you know, I do have problems with implementation, productivity of my development teams, you know, whatever. But most CEOs, like, all of them want to be more Agile. Now, if you tell them, would you agree having no plan? They will say, well, I can't do that because I have shareholders. I have, like, I need to be accountable as well. So I need to not only know the direction, but have some clear commitments, right? So you tell them, okay, so how do you make this work with Agile? And this is where the whole discussion starts, right? So how do you combine a philosophy where you unleash energy, creativity, you're very close to your stakeholders, you get things done, but at the same time, respecting the fact that when you run a company, and I've been running companies for 30 years, you can't just tell people, you know, I don't know where we're going, but don't worry, we'll be fine. You know, it's not enough. People need some direction, understanding, commitments, right? So how do you reconcile all that is the whole problem that we're trying to address, you know, but it's not a new problem. And no, Agile is not dead, project management is not dead. Do we need to embrace, so the people who say Agile is dead, what are they coming up with? Like product, you know, what is it that they're coming up with? And maybe we should try and avoid the same mistake that the project management community did by, in a way, refusing to see that Agile was bringing so much to the world, and talk about 30, 40 years ago, right? And then get cornered, right? So if we do the same with Agile now, that's a big mistake, and we should probably think about it and anticipate that, so that we stop this debate around Agile is dead, which makes no sense, and maybe say that SAFe needs to evolve, or maybe the application of Scrum has to be more clearly defined, or maybe maybe we have a number of Agile coaches that are not very good, you know, so how do we deal with this? You know, because all these people who are not very competent, and it's the same with project managers, they affect the reputation of the profession, you know, so how do we deal with this? And it's not about
100%
censoring and, you know, forcing people to go through certifications or whatever, but we need to put some order also in the quality of the people who represent the profession.
So to that extent, Pierre, so as we know, within Scrum, you know, one of the events is doing a retrospective. And so has there been, or is there one plan to do a retrospective within PMI to address those specific things that you just mentioned? Because I think that's an excellent idea, to look and say, hey, you know, retrospectively, when this occurred, when the Agile movement, let's say, started, project management, you know, kind of took on a different perspective from many. What is it that we can do to improve that going forward? as we're evolving with AI, product, and the other things that are now coming into play or have already come into play as well.
So maybe I can talk to that a little bit. So I would not use the expression of retrospective, but basically what we are doing at PMI, and I'm saying it as a full awareness that not everyone knows that, is that year over year, we do our proprietary research where we basically scan the state of the profession. We produce outcome that is called pulse of the profession, and that gives us data to see progress and to see what is important for people in the profession and how is also their way of working changing, etc. So we have data that are showing how project professionals more and more frequently use agile practices to deliver on their objectives, etc. And we see how it's positively impacting their work. And through this work, we are identifying topics that are impacting the community, that are helping community professionals. And then we work on incorporating of these topics in our learning offer. And then back to Pierre's point that sometimes you really need to work on quality and help people to understand how to deliver quality in their job. So then if needed, then we also incorporate it in other offerings that we have, like certifications. So that's, for instance, the reason why PMP, as Pierre says, is 50% agile. It didn't happen overnight, and also it didn't happen as an accident, but it happened from us being able to see data and to see what is important for success of change initiatives and success of projects and success of organizational transformations as well.
Interesting. Yeah, thank you, Linka. I do want to shift gears just slightly so there's another perspective that I've seen that people are, oftentimes concerned about. One is, if they say, oh, okay, well, this is just a certification farm, and it's all about the certifications and so forth. Those are things that have become industry standards in many ways. Is there a change or an expectation of how the certifications may evolve in this process with this joining of Agile Alliance and PMI?
Yeah, so something that is sometimes misunderstood. So PMI has a business as well, right? That's how we get the funding to do what we're doing. Indeed, the majority of our revenue come from our professional certifications, and by professional certifications, I mean things like PMP, but we have more, right? We have PMI ACP in the Agile space. We have construction, we have PMOGA, we have, like, in fact, more than you would think, maybe too many sometimes. That's what we think. And then we have membership. So membership works worldwide outside of China. We cannot have members in China for regulatory reasons. So what we try to do is to provide some value to our members by giving them free access to a number of things, and in particular, free access to courses. So we have our courses activities as well. Preparing for PMP is mostly outsourced. So we have a whole network of training partners. And then we have our own e-learning course that people can use. But we also have a ton of courses on other things. Some of them are free for members. Some of them are free for all. Some of them are not free for anyone, but members typically have a discount, things like that. But if I look at, so we have 800 employees. I would say probably a minority of them actually work on the stuff that generate revenues. But we also have events, I should have said that. We have our annual conference called the Global Summit. We have about 5,000 people going there. And then we have replica of that locally in our regions, plus all the events that we support from our chapters and everything. But the majority of our people do not necessarily work on stuff that directly generates revenue. That's why we're a nonprofit. And so we did not buy or make this acquisition or integration of Agile Alliance with the idea to transform Agile Alliance in a certification shop. In fact, at this point, we have no intent, not only no plans, but no intent to create any particular professional certification with the Agile Alliance label. in particular because we already have PMI ACP, which was developed together with the Agile Alliance. So there's no need to create another one, right? But I mean, we don't know if there is a need, but it's definitely not the objective. If a need arises in the future, we can discuss it and see why, right? Now, if I think about the courses, that's a little different. So for instance, we have all these AI courses. They were developed for the needs of project professionals in general. But maybe there's an opportunity for us to think about people who are agile coaches, for instance, like how do you leverage AI? Should we develop some content courses for that? Maybe, you know, and then would we make this available for free for the Agile Alliance members? Probably yes, if we can, you know, that kind of ideas. But no, we're not planning on creating more certifications following the integration of Agile Alliance. That's not the idea. But you know, if the profession says we should, then we can take a look at that. We definitely don't want to be in the space of Scrum certifications and SAFe certifications, any of that. Like we have no interest. We want to stay on a principle level. That's what we do at PMI.
And I guess, you know, maybe a similar question as it pertains to Agile conferences. I mean, you know, Agile Alliance pretty much has like the largest Agile conferences that, you know, many Agilists look forward to going to annually and so forth. Will there be a change with that, or is that, hey, let's just leave that alone and allow the Agile Alliance portion to continue with that as they have? Is there any perspective on that?
So we do not have any specific plans yet. Like if I share with you what I would ideally want to see happen, of course, I want to see the Agile Alliance conference be like bigger, more successful, bring more value over time. So definitely not merge it with the PMI conference. That's absolutely not what we want to do. But I would probably want to see, just like we're doing with our other conferences, we want to see maybe Agile Alliance conferences in Asia, in the Middle East. You know, there are many regions in the world where Agile Alliance has been fairly small or even almost inexistent. So is there an opportunity to do that? You know, if we throw this idea to our chapters, then we want to do it right away, you know, and probably create a little bit of a mess, right? So we want to, it's great to have a lot of enthusiasm and energy, but you also want to do things right. So it requires a bit of planning this time, you know, so we don't just try stuff and then regret, but have some idea of how we can do that. How can a conference locally find its market? You know, probably want to fix the global conference first, because it's like, its attendance has been like declining a little bit. We're not seeing this with the PMI Global Summit, right? Our PMI Global Summit's attendance is actually going up. So there's no fatality probably, but we want to understand what the dynamics are. You know, maybe we don't know, right? So we want to take a look at this conference first and see how we can make it more successful, and then see how we can expand. Do we want to have, let's say at our global summit, in addition to the Agile Alliance conference, annual conference, do we want to have a subset of the conference, our global summit, maybe more dedicated to the Agile methodologies or Agile thinking, agility, or maybe even for the people who work a lot in Agile? Yes, maybe that would be great, you know, and have the Agile Alliance content there. Maybe some of you in the community come over. You know, if we could do that, that would be awesome. Like we want to, as much as possible, make sure that our specialized communities without the PMI world can, on one side, benefit from the interactions with the other sub-communities, but also, as much as possible, keep their specificity as well, right?
If I may add to that something, actually the principle, how we build content for our events such as Global Summit or Global Summit Series or regional conferences is basically identical with the process how Agile Alliance conference is built. So we have call for papers, we have volunteers, we have people from the community who submit their topics, and there's a team that is looking at that. And then basically their objective is to match the content with the needs of the community. And majority of our speakers at conferences that we organize are people from our community. we as PMI team, PMI employees, we have usually typical minor share of being on stage. It's mostly providing updates to the community, informing about what's new, and then all the rest is coming from the community. So it's basically the same principle that we already have.
Yeah, people don't pay to see me on stage talk about PMI, so they're happy to get an update, but that's not where they come to the conference.
I bet that they want to understand the vision in the coming years, like for sure.
If I'm short and brief, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for all that insight. I mean, I think that for the sake of time, we have about 15 minutes left, and I do want to have some time at the end for everybody that might have a question. But on the screen, we do have some other questions that came up prior to us having the meetup, which were, what are the primary drivers for the decision to join forces, right? Like how this idea came about. I know that it might sound organic. I know that it might sound far-fetched, like how this came about. And then some of the other ones, they might seem similar. Like, is there an intent to formalize a hybrid model? Is there an intent to create a new framework or not? Maybe long-term, short-term. And then last but not least, which market is the move target, right? Is this the tech world or the manufacturing or something else? Like, or all together, like, are we applying everything that we have learned and we're gonna learn from this fusion into all the markets? Or maybe, like you mentioned, construction. I know you have your own certification for construction. Side note, I particularly work in an agile setting with construction, and that was fun to say the least, but it's totally doable. So I know that permits and slab come first, totally. But for example, we build modular hotels as they were breaking ground on the side. So that's an example of how things can be applied in terms that other people may see as, okay, this has to be traditional waterfall, but in reality, there's space for innovation no matter what. So you have the questions on the screen. I don't know how you want to address them, but if
I can very quickly, like super quick, like answer easily. So the first one, on the PMI side, like I said, we're trying to have a broader vision of project work, in particular because with all the automation coming from AI, like we need to change the way project professionals think about their own role. If you go to LinkedIn on my page or the PMI page or Lenka's page and look at project success, we've been starting to talk to people about project success in a way that I think would be more natural for you coming from the Agile side than it is for many project managers, right? So we want to tell them, look, you can't just say because the project was poorly designed that you still did your job. That's not enough. Like you want to make sure that the outcomes in the end, you own that, right? So it's a difficult move for them because they feel, I don't control that. So how can I be responsible for it? But anyway, so for us, it's like one of the moves we're making, certainly very visible to you. But when we acquired PMOGA, trust me, the PMO community was like, oh, okay, that's a very big move for us, right? And we want to continue to do that in the areas like some of you mentioned, transformation, cultural transformation, change management. This is definitely an area where we think also we need to make progress from a content. I don't know that we'll make an acquisition, but one way or another, we want to expand our thinking and roles in that space as well. Is there an intent to formalize a hybrid model? So the problem is there's no such thing as a hybrid model. I know it's easy to call it that way, but it's a continuum, right? So it's not easy to formalize a hybrid model. Some people do that at PMI. They write books around that. Mm-hmm. You will rarely hear me talk about hybrid because I don't know what we're talking about. Like I'm more like you have to master all these ideas, all these methodologies, and then you find your own way given the circumstances. Like what you described on construction is not applying Scrum to construction, but it's still applying the principles of agility to the construction industry. And that's exactly similar to what I was describing for the aerospace industry. So that's massively interesting. And I would be way more interested in developing stories like the one you described. How do you apply agile principles to construction? Thinking that way is more interesting to me than discussing the details of a hybrid model, like, what is the new SAFe that is hybrid or Scrum that is hybrid? Maybe some companies, consultants will come up with that and we can, if it's good, then we can say it's good, then trying to have people in a room defining what is the perfect methodologies. Like, trust me, put 2 project managers in a room to talk about methodologies. This is going to be a nightmare, right? So let's focus more on the principles. It's a better and safer plan for us. They intend to create a new framework that could compete with SAFe. I think I already answered no. Should we express ourselves about SAFe and say, look, big organizations right now are suffering with the SAFe implementation? For PMI, I think it's a dangerous game to play, because if we start taking a position or a stance that is against anything, then we're developing an unhealthy debate where other competitors to SAFe will try to use us to promote their methods. I think it's better to talk about the principles and try to get people to better understand how to be successful implementing SAFe, and anything else. But it's not our business to go into a specific framework. Which market is this move targeting? Like I said before, yes, I would be extremely interested in expanding the agility principles and values to many sectors, and I think many of them will gain from that. However, my question, and it's also, I don't have an answer to that, and it's a discussion I've been having with Lenka and others, and I would love to have with the community as well. Agile still started on trying to improve software development, right? So should we ignore that, or should we try to stay involved in this specific software development community? I don't know, like, what is our role there? Should we not even touch that? Should we be closer to that? I think that's a good and interesting discussion at a time when AI is completely transforming the way software is being developed. I feel, we should probably play a role in that, right? So instead of only focusing on how to apply Agile to construction, going back to the roots of Agile, is there something that needs to change there? And should we play a role as Agile Alliance or PMI more broadly in nurturing a debate here and helping these people to come up with new methods, approaches? I don't know.
That's a very interesting reflection, Pierre. My personal thought, and Quincy, I would like to hear what you think, is that there's different problems to be solved in every industry, right? They don't suffer from the same conundrums. And there's going to be problems that are, they're going to be even or equal or similar, but there's different problems that we solve for different industries. Like I said, trying to figure out how to build a hotel in a more agile way than just following steps all along the way. It's been interesting. It's been fantastic. But it's not the same as developing software. In developing software, you have a million more ways to be flexible and to be adaptive than just building hotels. But Quincy, I don't know, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so one of the things I just added in the chat was kind of specific to around the whole hybrid, aspect, in that, and I'm not reading it, but I found myself almost like saying the exact same thing I just typed, which is, so I've been a very big advocate in the consulting space in transformation of hybrids. And the reason has been that what I have found is oftentimes if you go in with a very structured methodology, sometimes that environment may not be accepting of it. And it may be too much at one time for them to take. So I see hybrids as taking something that is formal, but then customizing it to that particular organization in a way that will be palatable for that organization as a step on the journey, not to water down the formal thing, but at times we also have to be effective in what we're doing. So sometimes we have to massage things until we know that the organization is mature enough to receive whatever that more formal thing is. And there are also times where the full formal methodology just may not be the right thing to do. There may be components of it, parts of it, which I think sometimes that's where we've erred with SAFe is, people want to do every single step of SAFe, and I'm like, okay, you can't do everyone, because if you do everything, you're not going to get any work done because it's too big, it's too much, and it's not really even intended for that. So, similar to all the processes and so forth in, PMI, methodology, not necessarily every single thing, and it depends. So, yeah, so that was maybe the thing that I would have, I would want to share as I was thinking about, the hybrid portion of it in that part of the discussion.
Well, if I may, I would offer another perspective when we talk about hybrid, and that is something that we are definitely looking into at PMI, especially with our thought leadership team. And that is that we see that especially larger organizations, they use agile approaches to development. I'm not purposefully saying software development, because I've seen in many cases where you can apply agile approaches to development of something. Right? It doesn't necessarily have to be software or digital product. And then they still need to also deliver projects in a classical sense because of these commitments, because of regulations and various other reasons. And then what is a challenge for professionals is how to merge these, how to marry these ways of working under one roof, under one company. And then we talk about such practical aspects like how do you do budgeting for these initiatives? How do you help people to synchronize, align different types of schedules or different types of planning, iterative, incremental, with milestones and stuff. So this is a very interesting area that exists more on the portfolio level, on pro PMO level, etc. So this is what we look at. What we see on our data is that whenever organizations apply agile mindset, then they are way more successful with this. But we also hear project professionals that they still want to have some guidance on that, help them to establish these principles at organizations. And I think a lot of people probably learned the hard way that it doesn't make sense to push for just one approach on one end and try to eliminate the other one, right? So, but we still need to have some practices, some guidance how to make that marriage efficient for professionals, but also for C-suite, for organizations that want to have benefits of delivering these changes.
Nice, thanks, Lenka. And so speaking of which, with the C-suite, we do have a question in the chat from Teresa. Do you anticipate a future positive impact to the value executives, people who hire PMs, place on the role of project managers with this merger? I feel that there is a lack of appreciation of PMs beyond box checkers, administrative organizers, et cetera, currently.
I think it's so definitely there's a lack of recognition of the profession. That is one of the biggest problems that I've been trying to address. It's not just because we make that move that suddenly CEOs and C-suite will think differently about project professionals or agile professionals or whatever. But I think if together we really focus on what matters and we work together, mostly in elevating the level of accountability of our profession. And if we're successful at navigating some of the transformations that are happening, especially with AI, we have this incredible opportunity to be more impactful and recognized. But in the end, recognition comes from your ability to impact results, right? So we cannot just ask for being recognized. We will be recognized if we deliver value. That's what it is. And then, of course, we need to communicate that value better than we've done in the past. So I hope that this move and other moves that we're making would help. That's my goal number one for my own legacy at PMI. That in the end, it's going to be about, did we get the profession better recognized? Do you get better salaries? Do you get better career opportunities? Do you have more impact, in transforming companies, transforming the world? That's what we want to see, and that move is just one of the multiple moves that we're making, but we have to build on it.
So guys, so number one, thank you everybody for being here. Particularly Lenka, Pierre, thank you for all the thorough explanation on this move. I personally appreciate it. I think that everybody here appreciated it because this is what we got to join the call today. So thank you very much for that. But thank you everybody for being here. If you do have any follow-up questions, we're running out of time. So I would say, feel free to shoot me an email or just post something on LinkedIn, and we'll see where it goes. In my experience is Lenka and Pierre, you guys have been incredibly responsive. So I think, shoot it to the ether in LinkedIn and somebody will take care of it because they're obviously invested into getting it right to the people. So I think that's goodwill. So number one, thank you from us to all of you. We would like to work together. Pierre, just so you know, these are our capabilities, not Pierre, but I mean, most of the people have been here before. This is kind of like what we do at MarQuiPlus. If you guys ever want to or need to get some insight into what do we do from our own point of view, we're happy to collaborate with you guys. And these are our QR codes to our LinkedIn profiles. In case we're not connected, feel free to connect with us. Okay. Quincy, anything else that you might want to add to today's call?
Just an additional thank you to everyone. I don't take lightly when people take time out of their day, especially their work day, because they may be using their lunch or whatever other time that they could have been doing something else. So we very much appreciate that and appreciate the conversation. So thanks, everyone.
Yeah, and I will be sharing this link on LinkedIn. We probably are going to cut off part of the beginning or whatever, there was a pause or something like that, some editing of sorts, but I'd be happy to share the insights from this call as well. Okay.
All right. Thank you for having us, and wish you all the best. And I'm happy we could do that. We love these kind of grassroots conversations. It gives us a lot of understanding of what's going on the ground and how people feel. So always very useful on our side. And I hope that we answered your questions, or most of them, in the most genuine. It was genuine. I hope it was useful.
Awesome.
Well, thank you again. Appreciate it. Thank you all. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye-bye.